The G7 summit of June 2025 was meant to be a symbol of unity, set against the serene Canadian Rockies. Leaders from the world's top democracies arrived, expected to tackle urgent global issues, climate, trade, security. The setting was chosen to inspire cooperation, but inside, tension was unmistakable. Instead of camaraderie, there was distance. Leaders sat apart, conversations were brief, and smiles were rare. The usual sense of shared purpose had vanished, replaced by self-interest and suspicion. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the host, hoped to reaffirm democratic values, but the agenda quickly unraveled. Disagreements dominated, and the spirit of partnership that defined the G7 for decades was gone. The beautiful landscape only highlighted the deep divisions inside. The world watched, expecting answers, but found only silence and disappointment. Traditional events meant to build trust felt hollow and forced. The leaders moved through the motions, but real engagement was missing. The summit became a showcase of discord, not leadership. The silence in Kananaskis was heavy, not peaceful. The unity of the Western world seemed to crumble in the shadow of the Rockies. The summit ended as one of the most fractured and disappointing in modern history. For the first time ever, the G7 summit ended without a joint communiqué. This absence was a stark symbol of failure, proof that the world's leading democracies couldn't agree on anything meaningful. Instead, Prime Minister Carney issued a bland chair's summary, listing topics but no agreements. Another tradition broke: no official group photo. The leaders couldn't even pretend to be united. The missing photo spoke volumes about the distrust and disunity at the summit. Insiders described the atmosphere as tense and subdued. Leaders avoided each other and side meetings were brief or cancelled. The sense of a club of allies was gone, replaced by a battlefield of competing interests. The US was seen as the main source of pressure, deepening the rifts. This collapse was years in the making, but Kananaskis made the cracks impossible to ignore. The failure to produce a joint statement or photo marked the end of an era. The G7, once a force for global cooperation, was now paralyzed by division. The summit became a historic failure, exposing the group's inability to lead together. The world saw not unity, but open discord. The summit's defining moment came when Prime Minister Carney refused to sign a joint communiqué that would have caved to US demands. This bold move, soon called the Carney Doctrine, declared that Canada would not be bullied into betraying its interests or values. Carney stood firm against US pressure, choosing principle over a hollow show of unity. The breaking point was an offensive US comment about Canada's sovereignty, a final insult Carney couldn't ignore. His refusal was about more than policy, it was about defending Canada's honor and independence. The Carney Doctrine set a new standard. Middle powers could resist unfair demands from superpowers. By refusing to sign, Carney sent a message. Canada would not sacrifice its sovereignty for appearances. The move was risky, but it earned respect from other leaders tired of US pressure. Carney's stand ended the summit, but set a powerful precedent. Even smaller economies could say no to a dominant power. The decision wasn't made lightly. Carney knew the risks, but he chose long-term principles over short-term comfort. The Carney Doctrine became a symbol of resistance to unilateralism. It called for a more balanced and respectful international order. The US, led by President Trump, arrived at the G7 with ultimatums, not compromise. The main demand: other nations must double their defense spending to 5% of GDP, an impossible ask. Trump refused to lift harsh tariffs on allies, further straining relations. He vetoed a proposal to lower the price cap on Russian oil, prioritizing US interests above all. Trump showed little interest in climate or health discussions, instead pushing for Russia's return to the group, a move the others rejected. He left the summit early, skipping key meetings and signaling America's retreat from leadership. The result: the US found itself isolated, with the other 6 nations united in opposition. America's pressure tactics backfired, pushing its allies closer together. The image of an isolated US at a summit of its closest partners was striking. The US was no longer seen as a reliable leader, but as a disruptive force. The global order had shifted. The summit exposed America's new role, alone and out of step. The world took notice. In response to US unilateralism, the other G7 members formed a united front, the G6. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the EU coordinated their response, refusing to be divided. Their unity was a powerful act of defiance, showing that international cooperation could survive without US leadership. French President Macron denounced American tactics, calling for stronger European independence. Germany prepared counter-tariffs, breaking from its usual caution. Japan filed a formal complaint against the US at the WTO. Even the UK, a traditional US ally, worked with Europe to protect its interests. Mexico, attending as a guest, had already launched legal countermeasures. The G6's coordinated resistance revealed the depth of opposition to US policies. The summit became a G1 versus G6 confrontation. This unity gave smaller countries like Canada the confidence to stand firm. Carney's rejection of the communiqué was backed by the G6. The US could no longer dictate terms to the world's major democracies. The G6 defended the rules-based order the US once championed. The summit redefined alliances and power dynamics. The world saw that unity could exist, even in resistance. The summit's failure had immediate economic fallout. Global markets reacted with anxiety. The World Bank downgraded growth forecasts, citing US-driven trade tensions. Capital flows dropped sharply, signaling a major slowdown. Canada's manufacturing sector lost billions, leading to job losses and factory closures. The trade dispute was no longer abstract, it hurt real people. Germany and Japan also suffered, with exports to the US plummeting due to tariffs. Global supply chains were disrupted, raising costs for producers and consumers. The economic pain was a direct result of political breakdown. The crisis became a vicious cycle. Political discord led to economic damage, which fueled more protectionism. The dream of a smoothly functioning global marketplace faded. The summit's empty promises left a legacy of instability. The world saw how quickly division could undermine prosperity. The cost of disunity was paid by workers and businesses everywhere. The damage would take years to repair. The 2025 G7 summit marked a turning point in global diplomacy. The era of consensus was over. Confrontation and competition took its place. The G7, once a force for unity, lost its influence. Nations now turn to institutions like the WTO and NATO to resolve disputes, bypassing the paralyzed G7. Diplomacy has become more rigid, about enforcing rules, not building trust. The Carney Doctrine set a new example for middle powers: resist pressure, build coalitions. Carney quickly strengthened ties with the EU and NATO after the summit. Coalition building is now the model for protecting interests in a world of great power rivalry. Future summits will see less unity, more open disagreement, and narrower deals. The spirit of collective responsibility has faded, replaced by nationalism. The silent, fractured summit in the Rockies was more than a failed meeting. It was the start of a new, more difficult era in global affairs. The world must now navigate diplomacy defined by confrontation, not cooperation.